John Lennon, the musician who lost an empire over just one signature. London, 1969. The city, once the vibrant heart of the swinging 60s, now felt heavy, burdened by the weight of fading dreams and fractured alliances. John Lennon, a man who had once commanded the adoration of millions, found himself increasingly isolated, a king watching his empire crumble. The Beatles, the band that had redefined music and culture, were tearing themselves apart. The air in the Apple Corps offices on Savile Row was thick with tension, not creativity. Arguments over business, over management, over Yoko had replaced the easy camaraderie that once fueled their genius. But the true battle wasn't just internal, it was external. A legal quagmire, a labyrinth of contracts and corporations designed to bind them, to control them, made to profit from their unparalleled success. At the center of this storm was a document, a legal agreement drafted by Alan Klein, the shrewd, controversial American manager John had brought in to fix Apple. Paul, George, and Ringo, wary of Klein, had resisted signing. John, however, saw Klein as his savior, the man who would cut through the corporate jargon, reclaim their money, and free them from the clutches of the old guard. He trusted Klein implicitly, a trust born of desperation and a deep-seated rebellion against the establishment. He had already signed. His signature, bold and defiant, was on the paper. But the other three refused, and without all four signatures, the legal dissolution of the Beatles, the final painful severing of ties, could not proceed. The stakes were astronomical. Millions of pounds, the ownership of their songs, the very legacy of the greatest band in history. John believed his signature was an act of liberation, a decisive stroke that would free him from the past, from the suffocating weight of Beatlemania, and allow him to forge a new path with Yoko. What he didn't know was that this single act, this one signature, would not only fail to free him, but would plunge him into a decade-long legal and emotional war, a war that would cost him friendships, fortunes, and ultimately a piece of his soul. He was about to lose an empire over just one signature. By 1969, the Beatles were no longer a band. They were four separate entities, each pulling in a different direction. John, deeply immersed in his relationship with Yoko, was shedding his Beatles skin, embracing avant-garde art, political activism, and a raw, confessional style of music. He felt stifled by the group, by the expectations, by the lingering shadow of Paul's dominance. Paul, ever the pragmatist, wanted to keep the band together, to maintain the creative partnership that had brought them so much success. He saw the business as a necessary evil, something to be managed, not dismantled. He distrusted Klein, seeing him as a manipulative opportunist. George, weary of being overshadowed, was blossoming as a songwriter, his spiritual journey leading him away from the material world of rock and roll. He yearned for artistic freedom, for recognition beyond the quiet Beatle moniker. Ringo, the steady heartbeat of the band, simply wanted peace. He was caught in the middle, loyal to all, but increasingly frustrated by the endless bickering. The core issue was money, or rather, the control of it. Apple Corps, their ambitious but chaotic business venture, was hemorrhaging cash. They needed a manager. John, convinced that Paul's father-in-law, Lee Eastman, was trying to take control, turned to Alan Klein. Klein was a notorious figure in the music industry, known for his aggressive tactics and his ability to recover artists' money. He promised John he would clean up Apple, protect their assets, and get them out of their crippling contracts. John, desperate for a solution, for someone to take charge, signed a management agreement with Klein. He believed it was the only way forward, a decisive break from the past. But Paul refused. He wanted Eastman. The other two, George and Ringo, wavered, caught between their loyalty to John and their apprehension about Klein. The legal documents for the dissolution of the Beatles, the final, painful step, required all four signatures. John had signed. He believed the others would follow. He was wrong. His single signature, meant to be a statement of intent, a declaration of independence, instead became the catalyst for a bitter, protracted legal war. A war that would pit friend against friend, brother against brother, and ultimately tear apart the most successful musical partnership in history. The empire was already crumbling, but John's signature was the crack that would shatter it completely. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. You just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The legal battle officially began on December 31st, 1970. Paul McCartney, unable to get the other three to agree to his choice of manager and deeply distressed by Klein's control over Apple, filed a lawsuit in the High Court in London to dissolve the Beatles' partnership. It was a devastating blow, not just legally, but emotionally. It meant that Paul was suing John, George, and Ringo. The dream was officially over, shattered in a courtroom. John, initially defiant, saw it as Paul's final act of betrayal. He felt vindicated in his choice of Klein, believing Paul was simply trying to sabotage their efforts to regain control of their finances. The legal proceedings were brutal. Every aspect of their business, their personal lives, their creative differences, was laid bare in public. Lawyers dissected contracts, accountants pored over ledgers, and the media feasted on the spectacle of the world's most beloved band tearing itself apart. Klein, true to his aggressive nature, fought tooth and nail. He launched countersuits, issued public statements, and used every legal maneuver to consolidate his power. John, fueled by his distrust of Paul and his unwavering belief in Klein, became increasingly entrenched. He saw the lawsuit as a personal attack, a continuation of the power struggles that had plagued the band for years. The emotional toll was immense. The once close bond between the four men frayed beyond repair. John and Paul, once inseparable songwriting partners, exchanged bitter public insults, their words amplified by the global media. George and Ringo, caught in the middle, tried to mediate, but the chasm between John and Paul was too wide. They eventually sided with Paul, recognizing the dangers of Klein's management. The legal documents, the endless meetings, the constant pressure, it all took a heavy toll on John. He was trying to launch his solo career, to find his own voice, but the ghost of the Beatles and the legal battle surrounding its demise haunted his every move. His signature, meant to be an act of liberation, had instead become a chain, binding him to a fight he desperately wanted to escape. The empire was not just crumbling, it was being systematically dismantled, piece by painful piece, in the cold, unforgiving light of the British legal system. As the legal battle intensified, a darker truth began to emerge about Alan Klein. His aggressive tactics, once seen by John as a sign of strength, started to look more like manipulation. His promises of financial salvation began to ring hollow. Paul's lawyers, meticulously dissecting Klein's past dealings, uncovered a pattern of questionable business practices, conflicts of interest, and outright deceit. They presented evidence that Klein was not just managing the Beatles' assets, but was actively siphoning off funds for his own benefit. John, initially dismissive of these claims, found himself increasingly isolated. George and Ringo, having witnessed Klein's methods firsthand, had already distanced themselves. They now fully supported Paul's efforts to remove him. The realization was a slow, agonizing burn for John. The man he had trusted, the man he had championed against his bandmates, was not the savior he had believed him to be. He was another opportunist, another manipulator, preying on their vulnerability. The weight of this betrayal was crushing. John had staked his reputation, his friendships, and a significant portion of his financial future on Klein. To admit he was wrong, to concede that Paul had been right all along, was a bitter pill to swallow. He was caught in a web of his own making. His signature, the one he had given so freely, had empowered the very person who was now exploiting them. The legal fight shifted. It was no longer just about dissolving the Beatles. It was about removing Klein, about reclaiming their stolen assets, about untangling the complex financial mess he had created. The tension escalated. Threats were made. John, already battling his own demons, found himself in a deeper, darker conflict than he had ever imagined. The empire was not just lost, it was being plundered. And John, the man who had sought freedom, found himself trapped in a gilded cage, built by his own hand. The climax of the legal battle arrived in 1973. After years of bitter litigation, countless court appearances, and the relentless pursuit of justice by Paul's legal team, the High Court in London finally ruled against Alan Klein. The judge found that Klein had indeed mismanaged the Beatles' affairs, acted against their best interests, and was to be removed as their business manager. The court ordered a full accounting of all funds and assets. For John, the ruling was a moment of profound, conflicting emotions. Relief, certainly. The nightmare of Klein's control was over. But also a deep, searing pain of betrayal. He had been wrong. Terribly, catastrophically wrong. He had alienated his bandmates, publicly attacked Paul, and championed a man who had ultimately proven to be a fraud. The financial losses were immense. Millions had been siphoned off, and while some would eventually be recovered, the damage was done. The empire, once boundless, was now significantly diminished. But the greatest loss wasn't monetary. It was the irreparable damage to his relationships with Paul, George, and Ringo. The trust was shattered. The camaraderie, the creative spark that had defined their youth, was extinguished. John, in a moment of raw honesty, later admitted his mistake. He called Paul, offering a tentative olive branch, a painful acknowledgement of his error. The conversation was strained, but it was a start. The legal victory against Klein was a hollow one for John. It came at too high a cost. The years of fighting, the emotional drain, the public humiliation, it had all taken a heavy toll. He had lost an empire, not just financially, but emotionally. The dream of the Beatles, the brotherhood, the shared journey, it was all gone, dissolved not by music, but by lawyers and signatures. And John Lennon, the musician who had once commanded the world, found himself standing in the wreckage of his own making, a testament to the devastating power of a single, misguided signature. The legal victory against Klein was a turning point, but the wounds it left ran deep. The formal dissolution of the Beatles' partnership was finally achieved in 1975, after years of complex negotiations. It was a quiet, almost anticlimactic end to a saga that had dominated headlines for half a decade. For John, the years that followed were a period of profound transformation. He moved to New York, embraced fatherhood with Sean, and retreated from the public eye. He baked bread, raised his son, and found a fragile peace in domesticity. The legal battles had left him exhausted, disillusioned, and wary of the music industry. He needed to heal, to rediscover himself beyond the shadow of the Beatles and the trauma of the Klein affair. His relationship with Paul, though never fully restored to its former intimacy, began a slow, tentative process of reconciliation. Phone calls became more frequent, less acrimonious. There were even a few unrecorded musical collaborations, fleeting moments of shared creativity that hinted at what might have been. He acknowledged his mistakes, his anger, his stubbornness. He understood, with the clarity of hindsight, that his trust in Klein had been a desperate attempt to assert control, to break free from what he perceived as Paul's dominance. George and Ringo also found their own paths, their solo careers flourishing, their relationships with John slowly mending. The shared trauma of the Klein years, ironically, became a strange bond between them. The empire was gone, the money was diminished, but John had gained something invaluable: perspective. He understood the true cost of unchecked ambition, of misplaced trust, and of allowing business to overshadow brotherhood. He had lost an empire over just one signature, but in the wreckage, he found a new kind of freedom: the freedom to be himself, unburdened by the weight of the past, focused on the simple joys of family and creation. The scars remained, but the healing had begun. New York City, December 8th, 1980. John Lennon was murdered. His life and his journey of reconciliation tragically cut short. His death plunged the world into grief, but it also cast a new light on his life, his struggles, and his enduring legacy. The story of Alan Klein and John's fateful signature remains a dark, often overlooked chapter in the Beatles' history. It's a cautionary tale about the perils of fame, the complexities of business, and the destructive power of internal conflict. The financial empire of the Beatles, though diminished, eventually recovered. The rights to their songs, the intellectual property they had fought so hard for, were eventually secured. But the human cost of that battle, the friendships fractured, the trust betrayed, the years of bitterness, that was a price that could never truly be repaid. John Lennon, the musician who lost an empire over just one signature, ultimately found a different kind of wealth. The wealth of family, of peace, of self-acceptance. His final years were marked by a profound sense of contentment, a quiet joy that had eluded him during the tumultuous Beatle years and the subsequent legal wars. His signature, once a symbol of his defiance and his misguided trust, became a poignant reminder of the lessons learned, of the importance of integrity, of the value of true friendship, and of the enduring power of forgiveness. The empire he lost was not just a band or a fortune. It was a dream, a brotherhood, a shared vision that had changed the world. And while that dream was shattered, its echoes, its music, its message continued to resonate, amplified by the very struggles that had threatened to silence it. The single signature, meant to be an end, became a beginning. A painful, arduous beginning, but one that ultimately led John Lennon to a deeper understanding of himself and of what truly mattered. The legal documents bearing John Lennon's bold signature are locked away in archives, a testament to a battle fought and won, but at immense cost. But the true legacy isn't in the paper. It's in the music that survived, the friendships that, however scarred, endured, and the profound lesson of a musician who lost an empire only to find himself. The end. If this story about the complexities of fame, the cost of betrayal, and the enduring power of resilience moved you, subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that even in the darkest shadows, truth and self-discovery can emerge. What historical moment made you realize the profound impact of a single decision? Tell us in the comments below.